Go ahead and step forward and state your name and your organization and your RS number and a brief summary of the bill.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Catherine Starr, and on behalf of Turo, I'd like to request the introduction of RS 0429 relating to rental and lease motor vehicles.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions? Any objection? Seeing none, thank you very much. Is your light on, Gary? You might have to hit the button on the microphone there.
On the base.
Red light.
Thank you. Thank you for the technical assistance. Members of the committee, thank you very much. My name is Gary Reeser. I'm with the Kansas Soybean Association, and I've talked to you, a number of you, about this bill. A little later today, you're going to hear from Caleb Little of the Kansas Soybean Association, who's going to testify in favor of House Bill 2012, which is on your agenda. The Kansas Soybean Association respectfully requests that we can, that you can vote to have a committee bill that has the same elements as House Bill 2012. It's a 5-cent per gallon tax exemption, $5 million a year credit limit, and a 5-year sunset. Only the bill we are requesting is for biodiesel, which is a soybean product, biodiesel. So we request that bill. Everything in that bill is the same as 2012, except it talks about biodiesel instead of ethanol. And Mr. Chairman, that number is RS 0765.
Thank you, Mr. Reeser. Committee, any questions? Any objection? Seeing none, the request is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Steve Kearney. I'm here to request introduction of 2 measures. One, sales tax authority for Pawnee County that they currently have, and they're wanting to expand it a bit to help pay for more public safety. And that RS number is 25 RS 0571.
Okay, committee, any questions? Are they expanding just the scope of the authority, or are they increasing the rate at all?
No, just expanding the use.
Okay.
Yes, the scope of the use, right.
Okay. Any objections, committee? Seeing none, the request is approved.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, the second bill, 25 RS 0558, is a request for sales tax exemption for Kansas Legal Services. They're a 501c3 exempt organization under the IRS, and they're seeking to join the 4th trip through the alphabet with exemptions for sales tax.
Okay. Thank you. Committee, any questions? Any objections? Seeing none, the request is approved.
Chairman, thank you. Members, thank you.
Any further requests for bill introductions? Seeing none, we will move on to our first item of the day, which is a hearing on House Bill 2012. And I'll turn first to the revisor's office for a summary on House Bill 2012.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2012 would provide for an income tax credit for the sale and distribution of ethanol blends for motor vehicles. For tax years 2026 through 2031, an income tax credit would be available for a retail dealer that sells higher ethanol blend at such retail dealer's retail service station, or a distributor that sells higher ethanol blend directly to the final user who is located in the state. The amount of the credit would equal 5 cents per gallon of higher ethanol blend sold by the retail dealer and dispersed throughout metered pumps at the retail dealer's retail service station or a distributor directly to the final user located in the state during the tax year in which the tax credit is claimed. Unused credits can be carried forward for up to 5 taxable years immediately following the taxable year in which the credit was granted. The tax credit would be non-refundable, and that the total amount of tax credit issued pursuant to this section would not exceed $5 million per tax year. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sievers. Committee, any questions for the reviser? Oh, Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is almost certainly a newbie question, but when you have that shall not exceed $5 million kind of clause in those bills, is it just first come, first serve? Do we know?
You know, I might defer to the Department of Revenue to explain how they actually calculate that. That's maybe them to leave it to them to kind of explain how they deal with that.
That is an excellent question, though. We'll have Department of Revenue maybe weigh in on that, who applies for it and how that is addressed. So, any further questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. At this time, we'd turn to Department of Revenue for an overview on the fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, Kathleen Smith with the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue indicates that we do not have data on retail sales of qualifying higher ethanol blend fuel to accurately estimate the fiscal effect of House Bill 2012. However, if the new credit is fully utilized, the bill would reduce state general fund revenues by $5 million per tax year, beginning in tax year 26 or fiscal year 27. With that, I would stand for questions.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead and weigh in on Representative Shu's question?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Usually if there is a cap, we would try, if there was an application process involved in the bill, that would take care of it because we'd be able to process those applications as they come in. If there's nothing in here, it would probably be the tax returns as they come in would be processed as a first come, first served basis. And so there will be some people out if there is no application process, if we would get near that cap.
Okay. And just to kind of follow up along that, when they're filing their tax return, they won't have any idea whether or not this credit has been used up, so they'll turn that in to you. And then you'll just have to, if that cap has already been met, reject that application, or I guess it wouldn't be an application, it would be just that
The
tax
filing of the
credit.
tax return, and that would be correct. And that's probably not a good way to go.
Okay. We might be working with you on developing an application there.
Yes.
Okay. Committee, any further questions on the fiscal note for Department of Revenue? See none. Thank you, Kathleen. At this point, we'll open up the proponent section testimony for House Bill 2012 and welcome first to committee the Honorable Ken Rogers.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I still have shivers when I come before the Tax Committee. I served a 4-year sentence. I was commuted to appropriations a few years ago. And my Ag Committee is waiting patiently. Normally, this is about the normal time we start, so really people aren't really missing me, but illnesses have taken some of my other folks away, so we will get brief here and get started. So good afternoon. Good to see you all. Thank you for the opportunity I have to speak on the benefits, I believe, of House Bill 2012. Those of you that don't know, I'm Ken Rogers, who represented from 110th District. That's in west central Kansas. And in that district is home of Amber Wave. It's a wheat protein now and ethanol plant in Phillipsburg. I am chair of the House Ag and Natural Resources Committee. Renewable fuels has a long history in Kansas, and Kansas has been one of the leaders when it comes from the old days of gasohol, which from some of you have never heard of, and we won't go down that path. But Kansas farmers, Kansas industrialists have made Kansas one of the leaders in renewable fuels. And now, I believe, is the time to move forward and increase access and sales to E15 to our citizens and those who will travel through our great state. House Bill 2012 provides an incentive for fuel retailers to offer E15 at higher blends of ethanol at their facilities. An income tax credit of some 5 cents a gallon for these higher blends sold by a dealer could be claimed from tax years beginning in 26 through 31. Now, it would be good to offer this credit at a larger amount, but as we just mentioned, it'd be capped at $5 million as we're all trying to be fiscally responsible. And this is also a beginning and to see what happens in this first $5 million. And we hope that if this is approved, that those credits are used. Renewable fuels continues to make gains in efficiency and clean air. And one of the great benefits to Kansans is the use of two of its key crops, corn and sorghum. This helps the cash or contracted prices that farmers receive for their efforts. It helps with local economies, as farmers are consumers too, you know. They buy all the inputs that households and non-farmers purchase. Well, as you know, there's a crowd here today, and you'll hear from experts within the industry and representatives from agriculture and fuel organizations on the merits of this legislation.
Get down from there.
I'm sorry.
Is
Do we have
that
some
you?
mute on?
That's
Okay.
all right.
We're just getting some
That's
feedback
some
on WebEx.
truck drivers, okay. This bill promotes biofuels, expanded markets for bringing ethanol to a town near you. This is a good investment for Kansas, colleagues. I stand in strong support of House Bill 2012 and ask you pass it favorably out of committee. Mr. Chairman, I'll take no questions. No, I'll take questions at the appropriate time.
Breaker 19. Mr. Chairman, I think we'll go ahead and take questions for you so you can get back to
Fine.
committee. And then for the rest of the conferees, I think we'll take questions at the end just to consolidate that and make it more efficient. But committee, any questions for Representative Rajas? Representative Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the basic idea here is that we think we need to incent these gas stations. I'll just use that word. I assume this is like a Phillips 66 station, right? So we're going to give them a income tax credit for taking delivery of E15 gas. Is that fair?
One of the bottom lines is to get more E15 in vehicles in Kansas. And so what we're trying to do, I believe, with this credit is to incentivize those, be it Casey's, be it Quick Trip, be it ma and pop shops in our other areas, that with this credit that they would offer E15, because there is cost to this. And so again, starting at 5 million is a way to start, but the bottom line is with all the ethanol we produce here in Kansas, to get it in as many retailers, because some aren't doing it because they don't want to have an extra cost or whatever. So with this, that may hopefully encourage them to make sure they have the right infrastructure and maybe promote that an E15 or higher blend.
Right, because I would think they'd have to dedicate another hose and another tank underground to store it and to pump it through, and those would be significant capital costs.
Right, and things like that are also probably for another day. There's some federal programs that have been in place looking to see what the future holds there, and that may be for another discussion as far as a true infrastructure bill. But what this is to and I would guess it's probably going to be a fairly small incentivize, you know, in most of these areas. It all depends, I guess, on your idea of what small is, but if it's a few $1,000s, that may be the difference in wanting to encourage them and, you know, to do that. I don't know if this is a long-term deal or not. We're looking at a 5-year program.
And on the income tax piece, if it is a Phillips 66, then that credit goes, I would assume, to the parent company as opposed to that local retail station that actually is pumping the gas.
I would guess if it goes to the parent company, it would go down to Bartlesville. If it's Phillips 66, or if it would go to Casey's, it would go to Altoona, Iowa, I believe is. The idea is that those facilities, though, are located in Kansas communities. And if they have E15, they may be offered, you know, a penny or two more budget friendly. They may also, we're hoping they'll spend money also in those retail locations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Rogers, do you have any idea what percentage of Kansas gas stations don't offer some kind of an ethanol blend? And would this do anything to help the stations that already do?
That's a great question. And you know what? You're going to get that answer from an expert. Because I probably have it here, but I don't want to take their testimony. The days that a station doesn't at least have some blend of ethanol probably are very rare. You know, just like we don't have regular gasoline, it's all lead-free. Now I'm showing my age. So, but hopefully somebody will be able to answer your question.
Committee, any further questions? Representative Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Representative. So, sounds like we need a tax credit for capital investment for a business because they want to offer a new product. There's some capital investment there, but they're hesitant to put in that capital investment, so we need a tax credit to subsidize their business venture. There's a lot of businesses in Kansas. There's a lot that can make a claim that they're good for Kansas. How do we explain carving out a very, very specific industry and giving them essentially a subsidy for their capital investment and not all other Kansas businesses?
That's a great question. I think it goes beyond just the corner fuel station. I think with this goes and helps production agriculture, produces all our constituents. I think we all have farmers that we represent that grow those commodities. I think it goes to a broader aspect of growing the economy. And so to simply say, and I would agree with you that every sector can probably come in for this committee and plead the need for some sort of incentive. I think what you're looking at this is a short term to continue to grow. It's kind of a carrot and stick. It's kind of a small carrot. Again, it's a multi-million-dollar is ethanol production, ethanol sales in Kansas, but there are many areas that don't offer it for whatever reason. And so that's what we're trying to do is to, the bottom line, increase more ethanol that is produced here in Kansas that goes into the cars and pickups of folks here in the state.
Okay. Representative Wolf and then Representative Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Corbett, Representative Wolf first and then Representative Corbett, yes.
My question is, how do you track it? How do you know that this ethanol is coming from Kansas farmers growing this? Is there a way to do that? And my second thing is, we're farmers, so I understand, but we're dealing with a water crisis right now. It takes a lot more water to grow corn than wheat.
Okay.
So just help me out with all that.
Well, as I said, Phillipsburg is a wheat gluten plant, and one of the co-products they make is ethanol. I think if the economy of an ethanol operation would like to try sorghum or wheat, I think they can try to do that. That's fine. And I understand the water situation absolutely. Programs, though, really kind of show the way that we grow more corn here in the state of Kansas. So as far as to know it's true, made ethanol here in Kansas, sometimes that may be difficult. We have a lot of facilities here in the state. I would guess that most of that, though, is delivered through different batteries. That's not the right word where they put fuel. Those bulk plants that they go to get that. There was some discussion of do we brand our ethanol? I want to make sure that doesn't hurt the Commerce Clause, of dictating. I don't think the state legislature should be picking winners and losers, because then all of a sudden now, do we go, well, do we use the plant at campus or do we use the plant at Garnett? Again, the bottom line is more ethanol in Kansas vehicles. Sell more ethanol.
Okay, committee, any further questions? Yeah. Seeing none, you got off easy. No, I'm kidding.
If that's easy, no,
Thank you, Representative. Okay. We'll move on to our next conferees. And again, committee, if you want to keep track of your questions, we'll go ahead and go through all of the proponents, and then we'll take questions at the end. So if you have a specific person or conferee that you want to address a question to, make a note of that. Next conferee, I'd like to welcome David Vandergrind. Welcome to the Tax Committee. You might have to hit, there's a little red button light on there.
How about that? Does
There
that
we
help?
go, loud and clear.
I'm Dave Vandergrind, CEO of ICM. We're a company located in Colwich, Kansas, and we design fuel ethanol plants in the state of Kansas, and I'm here on the House Bill 2012. One of the things that there's going to be other people talking about the ag benefits of this and the retail benefits of this. I really want to kind of hit on the environmental benefits of fuel ethanol. Right now, to answer somebody's earlier question, almost all gas sold in Kansas as 87 octane regular gasoline is 10% ethanol today. And there's different grades of gas. There's 87, 89, 91, regular mid-grade premium. All of them contain 10% ethanol. How do they get the octane higher? They add more aromatics. What are aromatics? Toluene, xylene, benzene, all carcinogenic products that they use today to increase the octane of gasoline. Ethanol, on the other hand, has raised the octane of gasoline by 2.5 points when you're 10%. 15% would raise it to about 3.5 points. What does that mean? That means the refinery needs to add less toxic aromatics to the gasoline, and they will come out with probably about an 83 octane instead of an 84 to start with, to be blended with gasoline. What does that mean to the consumer? If you live out in rural Kansas, not much. Okay, you're out in the open area and the wind blows a lot. But if you're in an urban area such as Wichita, Kansas City, those areas you have a lot more exposure to toxic aromatics off of vehicles. So the ability to reduce that toxicity will improve the air quality that we breathe. And you say, well, what's the benefit? Well, in Kansas, in Wichita, your Quick Trips do sell ethanol-free gas. It's 50 cents more expensive at the pump than E10. So E15 is going to further reduce the cost of gasoline to the consumer. And those reduction in aromatics will also reduce the toxicity to people in Kansas. 10% ethanol reduces toxic emissions, fine particulate, by 20%. 15% will increase it to reduce it by 30%. That's been done by testing, been validated by University Riverside in California that did a bunch of emissions testing on different fuels, and we have data on that if you're interested. So what does it mean to Kansas? You were talking about, is it going to be Kansas ethanol? More than likely, yes, because it's going to be marketed and blended here in the state at the terminals. They will blend, instead of 10%, they will blend 15%. And so it will generally be Kansas ethanol because we are scattered from the west side of Kansas, Phillipsburg, Garden City, Liberal, to the east side of Kansas, Garnett, Pratt, and Lyons, you know, the ethanol plants in Kansas are pretty well distributed to be the supply. And so even the raw material, even the base stock, the gasoline, that's 85% when you're blending 15%, that is generally coming here from inside the state of Kansas at the refineries at Independence and McPherson and El Dorado. And it will allow them to make a lower octane feedstock. And so that will be a benefit to them. So when you look at what does it do? It boosts agriculture because we're using more crops. As we are fully aware, water is a bit of an issue here. These ethanol plants run on corn or milo. So the milo, which is grown in a lot of non-irrigated, on a lot of non-irrigated land, will work very well through an ethanol plant, and you will produce the same fuel ethanol that you produce from corn. So there's a benefit to agriculture. There's a benefit to the oil refineries. They can make a lower octane. They do not have to add as many toxic aromatics to the gas that they market here within the state. And the consumer is going to benefit because they will get a higher octane fuel at a lower price. Again, premium gasoline in whatever town you're in case you're in Wichita, is usually around 40 to 50 cents higher than regular gasoline. In Wichita, through the Jump Start program, their premium gasoline is 10 cents less than regular gasoline. Why is that? Because we're getting the octane from the ethanol, not from high-priced aromatics. So all the way around, I believe that this program is good for the environment, it's good for agriculture, it's good for the consumer, and it's good for the oil companies, the petroleum companies. So all the way around, this is kind of a win-win. And yes, we're seeing it as a $5 million tax liability, if you want to call it that, or cost. But I think the benefits far outweigh the cost of doing this. And over a 5-year period, we will be able to continue to convert stations and retailers in Kansas over to an E15 blend, which would be good for, in my opinion, everybody. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony, and we'll move on to the next conferee. Don't go anywhere, though. We might have some questions. Next conferee would be Trey Green. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good afternoon. I am Trey Green, and thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of House Bill 2012 on behalf of Renew Kansas Biofuels Association, the voluntary trade association for the biofuel processing industry in our state. A lot of what we have in our written testimony that we've provided, I won't cover that. I'll be brief so that way you all can hear from the other experts we have in the room. But however, in the gist, House Bill 2012, due to its promotion of liquid biofuels, the opportunity consumers have to save money at the fuel pump, and the investment in our rural economies, we stand in strong support of the measure and ask the committee to pass it favorably. In the interest of allowing ample time for other conferees, I will step aside and stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Caleb Little with Kansas Soybean Association.
Thank you. Chairman Smith and members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to be with you here this afternoon. You may wonder why the soybean organization is here talking about an ethanol bill. But we're here in support of House Bill 2012 and also appreciate the opportunity to introduce the companion bill related to biodiesel and renewable diesel. We're here to submit this testimony on behalf of the Kansas soybean farmers and our Kansas Soybean Association members. We very intentionally followed the language of House Bill 2012, and for all of the similar, and are introducing it for all of the same reasons as you'll hear today on the ethanol side. So Kansas was the 11th ranked soybean producing state last year at 154 million bushels in 2024. And a significant driver of soybean oil demand is the co-product. So when you grow soybeans, you get protein meal and oil, and you have to process those beans regardless of what you're going to use the meal for. And in recent years, one of the biggest demands for that oil has come from biofuels. Same way ethanol is to gasoline markets, biodiesel and renewable diesel are to diesel fuel. So our economy is powered by the diesel engine, heavy-duty trucking, railroads, delivery trucks, ag equipment, and so much more. And these markets are increasingly turning to American-made, cleaner-burning options like biodiesel and renewable diesel. This fuel is not only made from soybean oil, but it can also be made from animal fats, recycled cooking oils, corn oil from ethanol plants, and even other agricultural products. So here in Kansas, that demand has led to some significant oilseed processing announcements. And we saw just in September, Schooler in Goodland opened up a new soybean processing plant that will process over 11 million bushels of soybeans and canola each year. As well as 30 new jobs in the community. We also saw Bartlett in Cherryville, Kansas, open up a significant processing plant down there for a whopping 49 million bushels a year of soybean production capability, 60 new jobs in a part of southeast Kansas that really needs that economic activity. So both plants held ribbon cuttings in September with lots of fanfare here in the state of Kansas. So it's important that we now that we have those processing plants open and running, it's important that we find economic demand and continue to create demand and incent demand for the products that those facilities will turn out so that they continue to grow and move forward. So again, just want to reiterate that the proposed companion bill that you guys are considering, we wanted to mirror that House Bill 2012 as closely as possible. It's essentially written as exactly the same wording except for biodiesel and renewable diesel blends above 10%. So again, this approach to incentivize ethanol, biodiesel, and renewable diesel is similar to legislation that we've seen successfully pass in our neighboring states. So Nebraska, Missouri, Iowa, Illinois all have similar biodiesel and ethanol legislation. It's also being considered in the current legislative sessions in Indiana and Wisconsin as well. So that end-user approach encourages both the production, but also the use here of the fuels in our state. So our Midwest peers clearly see the economic benefits of supporting cleaner fuels, and industries grown, produced right here at home, so there's a ripple effect from the fuel markets all the way down into our rural communities by supporting these fuels. So want to thank you for your time and appreciate the consideration and support of House Bill 2012 and the proposed companion legislation for biodiesel. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next conferee would be Josh Rowe with Kansas Corn Growers.
All right, good afternoon, Chairman Smith, members of the committee. Josh Rowe with Kansas Corn here. Appreciate the opportunity to provide some testimony. Now, I had 4 pages with lots of information in my testimony. I just want to hit a couple of high points today and not repeat a lot of what has been going on. But if you get one thing from my testimony today, really want you to understand that, although the word, farmer, agriculture, farmers, my members are not direct recipients or benefits of this program here. If this bill is passed as it is, it's rough times in ag right now, especially in row crop agriculture. Prices going into this growing season are below break-even levels, and anything that can give us some support on the market side will be very beneficial through there. So that's why you'll see strong support from the ag community through that. And really, for almost a decade now, Kansas Corn's been working closely with fuel retailers across the state to offer higher blends of ethanol. In response to a comment or a question earlier, we have approximately 150 gas stations in the state that offer blends at E15 and above. And that's less than 10% of all of our fuel retailers through that. And then we'll also mention just the wide-ranging thing, you know, because I think there's a long history of ethanol, as Chairman Rogers talked to from before. You know, we've seen, especially in the last 20 years, you know, obviously the base fuel being pretty much entirely go from E0 to E10. Throughout that time, we started with, maybe there was a few scattered E85 pumps or, you know, gasoline that contains 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline. But those were, you know, those pumps kind of few and far between throughout the state, and then, you know, require the use of a special flex fuel vehicle. You'll hear about E15 a lot today, or 15% ethanol. That is approved by the EPA for all cars 2001 and newer. So that's roughly 96% of the cars on the road today are fully, you know, warranted to utilize E15. Higher blends of ethanol can be used in flex fuel vehicles. And really, the other big change we've seen in the automobile industry, these newer vehicles, especially in that last 5 to 7 year range, kind of these smaller, turbocharged, very high compression engines. And so these newer vehicles can utilize that extra octane that ethanol provides, so you don't see that drastic maybe drop in fuel economy we did with vehicles, you know, 20 years old and older through there. So I think that's really important to mention through there, because when you hear about these savings per gallon of ethanol, you know, E15 being roughly 15 cents cheaper than E10, the consumer really can benefit from that, especially with these modern vehicles. Look at Kansas, consumers purchasing about 1.1 billion gallons of just unleaded gasoline of fuel per year. So if we could increase that average blend rate, you know, 1%, that's 16 million gallons of ethanol roughly, and that attributes down to 5.7 million bushels of corn or grain sorghum through there. So it's not, you know, I can't, you know, sit up here and tell you if this bill's enacted, it's going to lead to this. There's some great, you know, stories out there what ethanol plants have provided to local producers in the terms of increased prices through there. The other great thing that I love with, you know, Kansas being a very large livestock industry, especially cattle and dairy industries as well, is when you run a bushel of corn or grain sorghum through that ethanol plant, what you get out the back, you get 2.8 approximately gallons of ethanol for a bushel of corn or grain sorghum. But then you also get this very valuable byproduct or co-product called distiller's grain. That's a high protein feed that the livestock industry, very high demand from the livestock industry. So maybe towards the birth of the ethanol industry, there was kind of this little bit of a competition between ethanol and livestock. I've never seen that partnership stronger than it is today, because it allows us to take that bushel of corn, instead of feeding it directly to an animal, run it through that ethanol refining process, and we get food and fuel from that same piece. You know, sometimes you go on the Google, the internet, talk about ethanol, it'll talk about food versus fuel. And that is one of those biggest misnomers out there. Our ethanol plants allow us to get food and fuel from that piece. Mr. Vandegren did a great job talking about the environmental aspects of ethanol. You can see a link in my study, you know, independent studies from USDA, Harvard University, Tufts University have shown that using ethanol compared to unleaded gasoline reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 46% through there. And then in our petroleum industry really benefits from using ethanol as the octane source. And so while this bill is obviously limited to Kansas, you heard about other surrounding states have had great success for the program. Our neighbors in Missouri started out with an amount and then actually had to add additional funds because this wasn't over, they chose supposed to add, I guess, funds, because this was an oversubscribed program through there. And where else we see ethanol in the news, this one probably didn't make a lot of the headlines, but at the start of the Trump administration last week, that whole barrage of executive orders were signed. You know, in one of them was declaring a national energy emergency. And specifically in that executive order, the president referenced how E15 could be a great benefit in helping meet national energy goals. And so that's a great piece. And our relationships with ethanol and the oil industries have really never been stronger. I get to work on a weekly basis with our top petroleum trade associations across the nation out there, and they're also, really working hand in hand on ways to expand E15 use nationwide. So it's lots of great things happening in this space, and appreciate the time to present this information in front of the committee, because this really will help Kansas farmers out there, and be happy to answer questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to welcome to committee Brett Grauerholtz. Welcome to committee, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee. I'm a fifth-generation farmer from north central Kansas, Republic County. So farming's been a pretty deep legacy in my family. This bill not directly says in the bill how it affects farmers, but in the long run, it really does. So let's go back to the field level where it all starts, and our ethanol starts in the field. As I was preparing testimony a couple evenings ago, I sat in my office surrounded by projections for 2025 in our for our operation. And we're getting ready to go on year 3 of a pretty substantial loss in the farm ag economy. And when we talk about losses to our farmers and our ag economies, that trickles down. That trickles down to our restaurants, our fuel stations, our schools, and our other businesses in town. So when we talk about losses that our farmers get, that's going to trickle down into school. That's lost tax revenue. That's lost sales tax. That's lost everything. So whatever we can do to help our farmers not get out of a hole, but just create some more income really helps. As I was thinking through this, I just want to throw out some quick numbers. A small farm operation, say 800 acres, that produces 100,000 bushels of corn. If we could get a premium above where we're at right now of 25 cents, 25 cents is nothing. We can see a swing of 10 cents in a matter of hours on the markets. So 25 cents gives back into the farmer's projected income $25,000. That's a small farmer. 800 acres nowadays it's not a great large farmer. It's not a tiny farmer, but we're not talking many acres. You take that over lots of corn acres, whatever acre, corn, wheat, sorghum, for ethanol use. We're talking a huge return from our farmers back into our communities, into our tax base. Yes, this may be a $5 million out of our tax base. I'm not an economist. I'm not a tax person. But what does that bring from our farmers that are spending? I'll be honest with you, in our operation, we make cuts. Some of the first cuts of our spending is our non-necessity items. When we go into town to get groceries, we might not drive through the local restaurant to get that extra food because we just went to town. We don't have that extra expendable income. We're not going to go into town to buy a new recliner. That old one's going to be good for another year, just because our heart and soul as the Kansas producer is in that ground. That is one of the very few things that we can never replace. And we are here to sustainably produce that. And we want a product coming off of our ground that is sustainable, that our customers, the fuel stations, the other consumers, and our ethanol can say, hey, that was produced sustainably. We're from a piece of ground, and we want to support this and go for this way. So I'm asking, I'm going to ask for support of this bill to pass it. Just remember where it comes from. It all comes from the field and the people that are back, my counterparts that are back on the farm right now, trying to figure out how they're going to move forward with production agriculture into next year, into the year to come. But most importantly, the next generation. So at the appropriate time, I would stand for any questions on how I look at marketing and whatnot.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, I'd like to welcome Steve Seabrook with Poet Biofuels.
Hi, guys. Thanks for letting me speak. I just ripped up everything that I had prepared to talk to you about, and I'm going to probably try and answer some questions while I'm here. My name is Steve Seabrook. I'm with Poet Biofuels based out of Wichita, Kansas. If you don't know about our business, we have 210 employees in Wichita. We buy 7% of the U.S. corn crop every year out of that little office in Wichita, and we represent about 22% of the bioethanol produced in the United States out of Wichita. Our whole presence was about market development. We started our business 25 years ago. Our background's in petroleum. Believe it or not, I worked for Koch Industries for 8 years. We all had one goal in mind when we started this business. We have the cheapest octane in the world, and we could put it in gasoline in a way that will save the consumer money. So it's been about consumer choice since day one. You guys had Dave Vandergren up here talking to you. That guy built 65% of the plants in the United States. We've worked with Amber Wave, which was Prairie Horizon Agri-Energy, Western Plains Energy, and Kansas Ethanol since the first day that they started production. You ask where the gallons go. Do they stay in Kansas? Roughly 5% of the production of ethanol here in the state stays at home. 70+% is exported out of the state for many reasons. Different carbon reasons. We have plants that ship to California because they have a carbon score that says so. We have plants that ship to Canada because they have a carbon score that says so. By and large, the main goal of the gallon is to stay in this state. If you don't have other reasons to take it out of this state, it's going to cost you 10 to 15 cents a gallon to move it out of here. We want it to stay at home. And so one of the reasons that our company is so interested in this, as Josh was talking about, this product has been approved in 2001 or newer vehicles. Since 2011, the EPA approved it. We've had a hard time getting it rolling. And the main reason you put an incentive out here is to get market development and consumer choice out in front of everybody. That's the main goal here. These similar legislation's been passed in Nebraska, Iowa, South Dakota, and Missouri. There is legislation proposed, and I'm going off memory here, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and Minnesota are states that are also looking at this. Why? And you guys know this better than anybody. As you start to see folks come to these ethanol plants, or they talk to folks in our industry, the first question is, how do we grow? And everybody in this business is going to say one thing: we just want access to the market. And over the last 15 years of my life, we've been trying to grow it. And for whatever reason, Phil Neer's going to come up after me, and he can talk about retail more than anybody in this building. But for whatever reason, we've had some hiccups that have prevented this growth. So I think what a lot of these Midwestern states are doing, sorry to say it this way, they're taking the bull by the horns, and they're trying to put their own programs in place to help this product grow because it has such an impact on their state. An example, last 4 years, anybody in an area where we grow sorghum, Western Kansas, all that's gone to China. Guess how much has gone to China this crop year? Zero. Not one bushel has moved that we know of to China. So that market's gone. Where's that being consumed? The ethanol plants are already taking it. So you've had this conversion, and guys, we've had 3 years of drought in this state. Corn prices have been high. Producers in this state, ethanol producers, have had a tough time competing at times because of that drought, and that's the nature of the beast, right? That changes. But this year, what's happening? China leaves the market. There's plenty of sorghum. Basis is 50 cents cheaper on sorghum. Just like that, ethanol plants have converted that sorghum over. So to me, when I speak about this, this is all about developing markets. There's over 2,000 retail stores in the state of Kansas. I think Josh said there's 150 offering this. Some of those stores are old. Some of those stores have underground tanks that are very, very expensive to replace. That's not what this is for. This is for folks that just want to give it a go. They sell pop, they sell sandwiches, they sell candy bars. They're scared to make a change at their pump of anything different. They may have to recalibrate their the meters in their pumps. They may have to change hoses to allow for E15. These are a couple $1,000s. That's what this is intended for. Give them access to a little money, give them a little incentive, and get that change. When 5 years from now, it won't be needed. If we can get this up and running, and we can get store A across the street from store B competing with each other as we get this product out, you no longer need a subsidy. And I can tell you, and I'll stop here because I'll go forever, we had a federal tax credit that went toward ethanol for years. And and when I say years, from the 70s up until roughly 2006, 2007 is when the federal excise tax credit went away. That catalyst is what got us in the door to Shell. Our first gallon we ever blended as a company was in St. Louis, Missouri with Shell and Quick Trip. And if we didn't have that little credit that it equals 5 cents a gallon for E10, we never would have had a catalyst to get them going. And they replaced a product called MTBE, which as Dave talked about, these are all aromatics that they're using. We were able to give them homegrown ethanol, 113 octane, cleanest burning product out there, and we got them going. And once that market started we went from St. Louis to the Ohio Valley. The Ohio Valley started growing like crazy. They started using E10. Eventually, it wasn't needed. When it wasn't needed, the federal excise tax credit was canceled, and it's been that way. So think of E15 today as yesterday's E10. That's all we're trying to do. That's all. Today, we export as an industry roughly 8% of all the ethanol produced in the United States. Why? It should be right here being consumed domestically. And we wouldn't have to grow one more bushel of corn. All of these states I mentioned with tax incentives, if you cut U.S. exports in half, you would consume 0 extra bushels to get that consumed in the United States, just by cutting our exports. So these are things that we're trying to do. We have to grow this industry somehow. We're hoping this little bit is enough to start that up again. So I'll stop there and I'll answer questions later. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our last conferee that I have listed is Philip Neer. Welcome to committee.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Philip Neer. My wife and I started the Jumpstart convenience store chain in Wichita several years ago. We started with one store, and our goal when we started this company was to sell blended fuels in the Wichita market. I'd spent the previous 25 years of my career out of college working for a fuel distribution company that sold branded fuels for all the major oil companies, Shell, BP, Phillips, Conoco, Valero, Cenex, all the majors. And we did that in 8 states. And that whole time I was in that business, there seemed to be a disconnect about where our oil supply was coming from. And back in the 2005, 2007 era, all we heard about was we were dependent on foreign crude. And in my mind, I was like, why do we have to be dependent on foreign crude? Doesn't make much sense to me. Why can't we use the products that we were given right here to change the way we do business? But people didn't want that. The industry didn't want that, I should say. And so I started this journey, and it's been a long, hard journey to try to convince people that ethanol is just a gasoline additive. And E15 is just gasoline. It's got 5% more ethanol in it, but it's not any different. It's just gasoline. But if you talk to the people on the street, they'll say, I don't know if I should put that in my car. Is my car going to run okay on that? But nobody talks about the things that Dave Vandergren talked about, the aromatics. They don't talk about aromatics cause cancer when we breathe it. And when we stand at the nozzle, squirting gas into our car, we breathe those vapors out of the gas tank. But nobody talks about it's bad for you. Ethanol's not bad for you. So I started this journey. And so as we bought our first store, we started selling blended fuels. And my wife and I have built this company up to over 30 stores now. We have 360 employees in our little company. We're privately owned, it's the 2 of us. Our family's involved in our business. We live in Wichita. You know, we're Kansans. You know, one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about is we're the tax collector. You know, we collect 44 cents a gallon on every gallon of tax that we pay to the state and the federal government. We collect tax on the stuff we sell in our store. We pay property taxes on our stores. We're paying a lot of taxes, you know, and we're the ones responsible to make sure those taxes are collected and paid. So that plays into this journey. Well, the oil companies, I'm going to jump back, the oil companies didn't really want to move to E15. Everybody else was more polite to me, but I'll just say it, they don't want that to happen. And so it's been you heard him speak a little earlier, it's been a hard journey to get people to convert because you can't really buy it just anywhere. You can get it at some places, but you can't get it at every terminal. So there is a journey or a roadblock in this conversion from E10 to E15 that it's not going to be easy for retailers. We've been aggressive in our path so that we can do it, and we're selling E15 in all of our stores. But we're a rarity in the state. We're part of that 150 locations that sell it. You know, it makes common sense. The bottom line is, why don't we want people to sell more of it? It helps us. It helps our state. It helps ag. It helps commerce. It helps the consumer. It saves the consumer money. So it's been a long journey, and we're just really getting started because there's been roadblocks in front of us this whole journey. I think this opportunity will encourage more retailers to try it, to try to figure out how to do it, to spend the money they need to spend to do it. They don't have to do it, but that doesn't help our state. You know, it helps our state if we contribute and help them to move that direction. So I could talk for a while about it too because I'm very passionate, as you can tell. But it's not just easy. It's just not you go out and buy some and put it in your tank and sell it. There's a whole lot more to it than that. But it can be done. And so I think this program will convince more people to do it, which will help everybody. I would love to answer any questions if anybody has any questions.
Thank you. That is the last conferee I show, unless there was anyone that I missed. Was there anyone else wishing to appear as a proponent? We have multiple written testimonies, but if there are no other in person. Okay, yeah, we've got one more conferee and then we'll go to questions.
Sorry, I tried to get it. Hopefully you all got my written testimony, and I requested to be on the list, so I apologize for that. I am Brian Postler, and I am the Executive Director for Fuel True Independent Energy and Convenience. Represent all the retailers in the state as well as the distributors who bring it from the pipe to your car. So thank you for the opportunity to talk with you all a bit. I just, in addition to what all has been said already, I just want to share a couple of other things really quickly. One is that your constituents care a lot about gas prices, right? We might be the only industry foolish enough to put our prices, our current prices, in 3-foot-high numbers out on the corner for everybody to see every day. But it makes it a very visible reminder of a barometer of how the economy is doing. And that's why gas prices are such a key component of consumer confidence in this Kansas economy, right? And so you've heard a lot about the wonderful things about E15 ethanol and what it can do, but from a marketer's perspective, it allows you to have a higher octane product at a lower price that you can charge to your consumers, right? And so from a marketer's point of view, it'd be great to have that as an opportunity to offer it to your customers. And so why is that? Why are only 150 of our retail locations out of the more than 2,000 in the state currently offering E15? And it's because of those barriers that you've heard a little bit about, right? Whether you have to do new tanks or new lines or new dispensers or all those upfront costs make a difference for you as a retailer. And so even though you might like to offer a competitively lower price than your competition across the street, right? There's those upfront costs that make it challenging. And so if we can offer a tax credit as an incentive for those fuel retailers to take a chance, let's put some more of this in and let's see how it does, right? And then take a chance to see if we can be competitive and make a difference with that E15. And so I think that's probably a key takeaway, is that it's already hard to be a retailer. We've got rising labor costs. We've got inflation for inventory. We are one of the most regulated industries in the entire state. Our insurance costs, we have to have third-party liability coverage. There's all sorts of things about our industry where the state comes and tells us how we have to do things, and we try to comply with all those things to make sure we deliver an essential product safely. This gives us a chance to invest back in and actually have a product that's better for the environment, better for consumers' pocketbooks, continue to have the same margin for us, and give us a chance to reinvest in our business. So it's going to be a win-win. Oh, and by the way, it's really good for ag, and this is an ag state, right? So all those things come together to make this a powerful tool to leverage and get the sort of investment that we want to see happening in the state to move the transition to E15. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
And Mr. Postler, I'm not sure if there was a mix-up, but if you wouldn't mind resending your testimony just to make sure we get that in front of the committee. I apologize for missing you, but glad I called to see if you wanted to step forward. But if you wouldn't mind resending that, just so we make sure to get that out to the committee, please. Committee, at this time, we'll go ahead and take any questions for the proponents. Are there any questions? Yes, Representative Smith.
On the east side of the state. And so many people go to Missouri to buy their gasoline. So if we can lower the price and have better fuel, again, it's a plus for Kansas. So, you know.
You're correct. And what happens is Kansas City is a great example, but most people don't realize the first two counties on the eastern border of Kansas and the first two counties on the southern border of Kansas are all facing that tax burden with our neighboring states. In Oklahoma, the motor fuel taxes are 7 cents a gallon on gas cheaper, diesel's 13 cents a gallon. It's less in Missouri. Taxes on cigarettes, taxes on beer and liquor are all cheaper in Missouri than Kansas. So that pushes a lot of dollars out of Kansas City across the state line. It's a real problem. Missouri has this 5 cent tax credit now for the retailers on the Kansas City, Missouri side. You don't have that on the Kansas side. So it's an important issue, and it's just a competitive issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you wouldn't mind staying up there, just had a quick follow-up question. In states that already have this, do you see any of them passing that on to the consumer, or do they use it to improve their facilities and provide the product?
I can't say that I have an answer for that, but our company would, and that's, if we have a chance to grow our customer base, to sell at a lower cost to drive business, most gasoline retailers would do that. Like I said, I don't know in those states, but we do it every day at our stores. We sell our blended fuels cheaper than our E10 at our stores. So, and I've talked to a lot of people here today that shop at our retail outlets, and most all of them have given me compliments on our super premium product, which is a blended fuel.
Okay, any further questions, committee? Representative Awerkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask one to the revisers? In the bill, as I'm reading it, or I guess the question is, the tax credit, does it apply to, it applies to sales. So even, let's say, nothing changes in the market, existing sales of this higher blend, if nothing changes, nobody adds any additional fuel pumps or anything, so just current retailers who sell this fuel, can they now take advantage of the credit?
Is that directed to me?
The reviser, I think he was asking the reviser about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I mean, there's nothing in the bill that would limit it to requiring it to be a new industry or new entity coming online. So yes.
Mr. Chairman, I guess open question, how many gallons are currently sold in Kansas of the type of fuel that would allow for this credit?
I can't answer that question. Do you know, Josh?
Thank you. And we can give you estimates with the stations that we've worked with through that, but Kansas gas retailers, you're not required to report those when you're paying their taxes. Phil's not, for instance, required to break down how many gallons of E10, E20, E30 he sells. So we don't have accurate data on what that is. It's a good, I guess, result of this legislation would probably give us a little bit more visibility of what those sales were.
I might add to that your question about how would that, it was a good question, by the way.
I would guess about 1 million gallons of E15.
today. At most.
There's
They,
170 million gallons a year of ethanol consumed in the state of Kansas, maybe a million of that's
Gentlemen, we will need you to step up to the mic just so it's broadcast. We are live streamed. I want to make sure everybody hears the answers.
There's roughly 170 million gallons of ethanol consumed in the state of Kansas today. And I don't have that fact, but I'm going to bet a million gallons is going to be pretty liberal and pretty close of E15. That incremental ethanol is what I'm talking about, sir, that extra piece, about a million gallons. Does that make sense? So if you're selling, let me think about this math. You got 170 million gallons, that'd be 1.7 billion gallons of gasoline, 10% of that's ethanol. Then you've got another chunk of gallons that is sold at E15. I bet it doesn't add up to a million gallons of ethanol a year. It's very small. When they're talking about 150 stations out of 2,000, it's not going to be a big amount. But I can get it for you. How about if I commit to that?
Thank
It
you.
gets a little hard to follow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I got it. Thanks.
and your question was really good about how would we know as a retailer, how would we discount our price? I think that's what you were asking. And we wouldn't know until we received it. So it would have to, where it would make an impact for us would be after we know we've received it, after the first year, then we would start discounting at the street. Because if we don't have it and we don't know if there's enough to get it, kind of puts us in a hard place to know what to, how to price our fuel. You asked the question, so I'm giving some clarity on how I see it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the question was more towards just whether or not the tax credit was for future sales that would result from capital investment. So do the tax credit have to apply to some sort of capital investment, so it's for new sales, or does it apply to existing sales? And I think the revisor did answer that.
I think it's going to be a mixed bag because the new people converting are going to have the infrastructure and the cost to get to that point. Like I said, it's not just like flipping on a light switch. You've got to change some stuff. You've got to find different sources. And then if you're branded, most of the branded oil companies won't allow you to sell it. So it's just not an easy walkthrough. But like they've said previously, it can happen. And it's been a long journey to get here, but this incentive should help. There's no guarantees, but there's no reason it shouldn't help.
I've got Representative Sanders up next, but I want to piggyback off of Representative Avercamp's question because it goes back to my question with Department of Revenue. How do we apply for this? We can have a great idea. We have lots of great ideas, or we think we do up here in the legislature, but when it comes to how that process works its way through the system, Department of Revenue, tax credits, things like that. If we don't keep track of the gallons, how are you going to apply for this tax credit? How do you know you're going to get it? If we're going to incentivize this, you won't know if you're going to get it, or since it is limited, you won't know if you're going to get that. You're going to have to put the investment in first before you can even get
There needs
qualify.
to be some clarity on how that's going to work. We do pay taxes, motor fuel taxes monthly. I talked about the 44 cents that's split between the state and the federal government, but those are paid every month. So there should be a way to implement that. I don't know how the other states are doing it. I have no one's asked that question that I know of, but there has to be a simpler way to do it than waiting till the end of the year.
Okay, would you be willing to work with me and Department of Revenue to develop that?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And if there's anyone else that wants to weigh in on that as well.
Sandy's coaching me here, and because it won't be me helping you, I'll be happy to offer the poet services. We have a guy that helped write this legislation, I believe, in Iowa and Nebraska. They were part of that, and so we'll be happy to help you with that as well.
Great, thank you. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I was really surprised to hear these numbers, 2,000 retail locations selling gasoline essentially, and only 15% or only 150 offering 15% and above. It seems to me that most everywhere I go, I see, ethanol at 15%. So are these retail locations, are they primary rural that don't offer this? Where are they? They don't appear to me to be in urban areas.
Thank you again, Josh Rowe, Kansas Corn. Some of the big, that's great to hear because we are starting to see where, I can go across the state, plan to get at least E15 and higher. It's through that. A very big market that we were missing out on. There is virtually zero E15 and above stations in the Kansas City metro area. There's a Casey's in Olathe that offers it. Outside of that, there's none. So that is a big missing chunk. Mr. Neer at Jumpstart does a great job with his locations through there. There's still a lot more stores in the Wichita area through that. But
if I may, Mr. Chairman, so do you think that there's a fear of people putting E15 in their gas tanks?
I absolutely. I think it's kind of even more than that. It's just something that's different. You're just used to grabbing that 87 unleaded. A lot of studies we've seen, the consumers not only will buy fuel at the same gas station, they will go to the same pump, if it is open. People are creatures of habit. That's a piece there. And but I think it is. It's just a different a change through that. I think you hit it.
And while you're up there, this would be a perfect question for you, Mr. Rowe. So Representative alluded to this earlier. I'm not a farmer, but from what I've heard, it takes an inordinate amount of water to grow corn, and that by increasing this, we're going to need to grow more corn. So would you address the amount of water it takes to grow corn?
Yeah, absolutely. Irrigation is an important component to corn production in areas of the state. Where we sit right now, less than 25% of all of our corn acres are irrigated in the state. 75% are rain-fed, dry land through that. In those areas of the state that are, more water challenged through that, we have seen, there's that shift with lower water intensive crops such as grain sorghum through there. But our growth and corn production in general just it's more and more dependent on dry land acres, not irrigation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, any further questions? Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I'd like to ask David Vandergren if he could come up. Thank you for coming out, David. Hey, actually, I kind of had a question. I just was trying to think back, and I was actually trying to do some search in the middle of some of this testimony, but is there some performance decrease in engines when they use that higher ethanol, or is there any negative effect to like your vehicles? I know vehicles can take it. I bought a new truck and it said I can do this, do this, and do this, but it seems like it was telling me that my mileage would be different or my performance could be different. But is that any of that true?
You want the short answer?
Absolutely.
No. Older vehicles, yes. When you didn't have the electronic ignition and stuff like that, but today's engines sense the fuel that's in the tank, whatever its octane happens to be, and it adjusts the engine accordingly. So when you have a higher octane fuel like a premium, that vehicle will sense that that's a premium fuel, and it will adjust for that particular fuel. E15, for example, is about 1 point to 1.5 points higher octane. So what we've seen in all of the newer vehicles, maybe say 2010 or 2005 on, is that they do not get worse mileage, they generally get better mileage. What Phil's customers tell him is that they get equal to better mileage with more power, more torque than they had before.
I'm not sure how short that answer was, but I appreciate it very much. And the reason I ask is because I've heard people say that before, but I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't even pay attention to what I put in my truck. As long as it's not diesel, I don't care what it is. I just put all kinds of stuff in my truck. Probably many different types of gas, but I've never noticed a difference, from driving or performance or mileage or anything like that.
Super premium in your truck would be a good thing.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Two more questions, Representative Turner and then Representative Howerton.
I tried to get him before he got away there, but he got away. Sorry, you got away from me before. I could ask. So just thinking about typical market forces from everything I've heard in testimony, you know, this, I would hear that it's an environmentally better product, that it's a cheaper product. It seems that consumers would be demanding this and that normal market forces would cause this rather than the state having to step in and give an incentive on this. So I'm just curious of your thoughts.
Well, candidly, E15 would be 5% more ethanol blended to gasoline. That'd be 5% less petroleum that they would sell. I would have to back up a little bit to say petroleum was the biggest adversary to higher blends of ethanol in the past. They are beginning to come around. They're beginning to be more supportive because of the environmental requirements. We've got to clean up the gasoline. The most economical way for the refineries to clean up the gasoline is to remove aromatics. Well, if you remove aromatics, you got to put some type of an octane enhancer into the fuel. Ethanol is the most economical thing they can do.
Okay, so to come full circle, it sounds like you're supporting my point, which is the market would drive demand for this, and even the major oil companies that you said in the past have opposed it would also be on board because it is a superior supplement to those other things that are environmentally not friendly.
Most of what you said was true, okay? Some of it is not true. You still have the petroleum industry saying, do I want to give up 5% market share? Am I going to promote this product that's going to take away 5% of my market share? The answer to that is no. They're not a big proponent of it. They're just not beating us up over it.
So if I can, one quick one. So I heard said in the last testimony, most branded oil companies won't allow you to sell it, to your point.
That's true.
So we're not even going to reach those stations with this.
Not without some type of an incentive. I do not believe. They're just not going to change. The system's not broke.
And this
You know, candidly, how many of you guys love to go to the gas station? It costs you money. And a week later, it's going to cost you again. That isn't someplace you really enjoy going, is the gas station. Except for Jumpstart, of course. Another positive there. But anyway, you know, it's something you do because you have to do. The price is out there. The price kind of frustrates you at times. It moves all over the place. The opportunity here is the Jumpstarts in Wichita. They sell super premium 10 cents below the price of regular, where Quick Trip across the street sells it for 50 cents above the price of regular gasoline. So there's a 60-cent spread between what Phil sells and what Quick Trip sells. But Quick Trip is still the elephant in the room. They're still the major player in Wichita, Kansas City, throughout the Midwest, and they're going to do what gets more people into the store. And I think incentivizing this may incentivize groups like Quick Trip, Quick Shop, 24/7 to take a look at this as something not only grown here, manufactured here, processed here, that is good for the environment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Last question, Representative Howerton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, does it affect hybrids at all? Is there any difference between a hybrid vehicle and just a regular gasoline vehicle?
If you have a hybrid vehicle, you can use E15, E20, E30, depending upon if it's a flex fuel, you could use as high as E85. But all vehicles that are hybrid vehicles will adapt with their computer to E10 or E15 and take advantage of it economically.
All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and close our proponent section testimony. I do not show any opposed or neutral. Is there anyone wishing to provide opposition testimony or neutral testimony?
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Seeing none, we will go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2012. And we've got just a few minutes left. I'd like to review and work the bill, House Bill 2004, and I'll turn to the reviser for a quick summary on that bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2004 provides countywide retailer sales tax authority for Seward County. Under the bill, Seward County would have the authority to submit a proposition to the electors to impose a countywide retailer sales tax, an amount of 0.5%, and pledging the revenue received for the purpose of financing the costs of roadway and bridge construction, maintenance, and improvements. The tax would expire after 10 years, but subsequent elections could reauthorize the tax for an additional 10-year periods. And revenue generated by the imposition of this tax would be retained by the county and only expended for the purposes that the revenue was pledged.
Thank you, Mr. Siebers. Our committee, are there any questions for the reviser on the bill? Yes, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this bill, the people of the county are going to vote yes or no, aren't they? That makes it, I think, fairly easy. So thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. What these bills do is essentially it's kind of a two-step process. The legislator grants the authority to the county commission to essentially pass a resolution or ordinance to then put it on the as an election. So yes, it would have to be ultimately approved by the electors of the county.
Committee, any further questions for the reviser? If not, is there discussion? Representative Francis.
Would you entertain a motion at this time if there's no
I
other
would.
discussion?
If there's further discussion, we can have that, but I would entertain a motion. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we pass out House Bill 2004 favorably. And is this when I do the consent calendar thing? And because it's non-controversial in matter, because it'll go to a vote of the people of that community, that it be put on the consent calendar.
Do we have a second? Representative Howerton. Committee, for those of you who might be new, just a reminder, consent calendar means as long as the bill was not amended, there's been no changes since it was introduced, it is eligible to be placed on the consent calendar. It's on the consent calendar for 3 days in the chamber, and then it's automatically voted on. It's just a way to expedite the process a little bit. If no one pulls it off of consent calendar, then it would have to go on general orders through the regular process. But it's just a way to expedite some of these more simple bills so they don't get caught up in the regular politics of the session sometimes. But we do have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Any votes wishing to be recorded? Seeing none, that does conclude our business for the day, and thank you all for your attention. We are adjourned.